This podcast is a part of the More Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Leader Podcast by Pattern Talent, where we interview great leaders and we seek to understand leadership. I'm Brad McDonald.
And I'm Taylor Jessup, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode. All right, Daily Leader Podcast is back. Another fantastic episode, another fantastic guest that we have on. Brad, I'm hoping and assuming you actually did it right this time and you recorded the video and audio so we don't get to the end and there's nothing. Do you want to double check that while we're here?
Actually, you can't check after you hit record, so I have no idea.
Wow, so we could just, James,
transcript only.
Yeah, the backstory there is this happened once and then we only had the audio, which is not the case for today. Brad's figured this thing out. It only took him 7 months to kind of figure it out. And we're really proud of him for that. So that's a big accomplishment with somebody with a tech IQ of 80 being 87. So way to go, man. All you Daily Leader Podcast people out there that just enjoyed our intro and keep coming back. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, send this podcast to your mother-in-law and your father-in-law. Go get the Daily Leader tattoo. That would be fantastic. Or t-shirt. If you want a t-shirt, please reach out. And if you are interested in Daily Leader group coaching, we do offer that as well. So those group coaching pods, as I like to call them, go on throughout the year. And if you're interested in hearing more about that and learning more about that, check out our website or our Instagram or send us an email or direct message on social media. Oh, that's a mouthful and not very fun. So Nikki, our producer, would probably be like, Taylor, you're an idiot. Don't keep doing that on the front of the podcast. But I didn't do it anyways, and so she'll win out at the end of the day. So with all that being said, enough talk from me. Brad, do you want to take a minute to introduce our fantastic guest for the day that I'm excited to get to know?
Yeah, we started the podcast 30 minutes ago. We just didn't hit record, so we decided it was finally time to hit record. But what we realized about our guest today, James Lawrence, is that he is in fact the most interesting man in the world. And I'm going to tell you why here in just a second. This is going to be a very fun podcast. We're probably going to have to edit a lot out of this. I feel like things might get a little out of hand here at one point or another.
I'm saying we're going to edit nothing.
I'm okay with that. Okay, we're editing nothing. We're just going.
There's no edits.
All right, there we go. I love it. Well, James is a husband. He's a father. He's an entrepreneur, and he is the founder of 5 startups. He's been a CEO since he was 22 years old, and he's a big proponent of doing what you love. And so not only is he a pilot, but he is also the winner of 2 auto racing championships and 18 auto racing races, which is pretty awesome.
Fantastic. That's amazing.
And also, James, I didn't say I wasn't going to do this, so I just feel like you need to show that our video viewers the water jug that you're drinking out of today. I feel like that really would set this.
That's my warm intro. Is the most interesting man alive, and I have the largest water bottle known to man. So I've been instructed. Brad's instructed me to show this.
That's so awesome.
And the goal for the game is he has to get through that before the end of the podcast.
Yeah, and I'm really upset because I'm only at 7 a.m.
Yeah, and so if James just walks away at one point to use the restroom in the middle of this podcast, let's just all be patient with that. Okay, he is consuming a lot of water today. And so he may need.
I actually had my blood drawn this morning, so I had to drink a lot of water, and so I actually refilled this.
That's amazing.
So now I feel bad because now it doesn't look good.
No, it looks great.
That's okay, James. We're in it with you, man. We're in this.
That's right.
We're all in this together.
This is me right here. Okay,
that's
so
Brad.
I
joined. My wife, I think, has bought enough of these that we own a small percentage of equity in Stanley now, or we should. We don't, but we should. I have like 30 of these.
Did you guys do that on purpose, Taylor? Because your bottle is color coded to Brad's wall, which really bothers me.
Yeah.
Don't know why that is.
That's just irritating.
Yeah, it is. It is. If
there's something afoot here.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Okay, so the reason, though, that, James, you're on the podcast today is because we want to talk about the work you're doing at Happy Company. And we're just really excited to get to know you, understand not only your story, but the story of the work that you're doing and how you're helping leaders all across the world and how you're using technology to do that. So thank you so much just for spending time with us today. Typically, this is the part where we would ask you to tell us your story, but we're gonna wait. We're gonna wait on that part, and we're gonna introduce you to the slow burn. Yeah. Okay, so Taylor, take it away. Let's roast James over here on the slow burn.
Painful. I feel like our listeners are on pins and needles because we introduced James as the most interesting man in the world, and we're like, but wait, for a while, as they're just sitting there waiting to hear his story. James, we play a game. We play a game on this podcast. It's called The Slow Burn. It was originally intended to be a rapid fire question session, and it turned out Brad and I do nothing quickly.
Nope. Not happening.
So, we're very slow. So the game essentially entails leadership, as we talk about a lot, is essentially wrestling with paradoxes, wrestling with two different competing things that, we could say, man, both may be important, and maybe one is a little bit truer in a moment than another. And so what we're going to do is we're going to intentionally put you in a rock and a hard place, give you things that we have at least perceived in leadership and found in leadership that have been hard to discover and hard to say, hey, this one is more important, push come to shove. And we're going to put that choice on you. We're going to give you that. And you get to say, all right, great, between these two things, I think this one is more important, push come to shove. And then you get about 15 seconds, 30 seconds to tell us why. And
do I get to find like the third door and give non-answers?
People have
like a presidential debate where I'm not going to answer anything.
You can just call us names.
Yeah, that's right.
Hurl insults at us, please. That'd be wonderful.
That'd be fantastic. You can, James, this is open. There is a point system. Nobody actually understands how the point system works, but we do assign points at the end of this. So,
James, you're competitive, so you're going to love that part of it.
I'm going to want to win. The problem is I don't actually know what I'm playing for or what the score is.
And Brad and I like it that way. We love to live in the gray area. So,
but we will give you a score at the end of the round.
Okay, am I allowed to take notes here, or how does that work? Like,
you don't need to. This is all in your heart. Okay. This is all. You're definitely ready.
My Zen.
There's a lot of judgment. We will be judging you a lot based on your answers. Okay. So
perfect. There's no right answers, so it's going to be great.
Right. Yeah, there's always the chance that the podcast could be over by the time we're done with this. We could just say, James, thanks so much for coming today, but this is it. So it's a big deal, James. It's a big deal.
Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah, you seem ready.
Never been more ready.
All right, ready. Let's give it a shot. All right, I'm gonna give you some paradoxes. I'm gonna say, hey, pick one and then tell us why. So, what is more important as a leader, being or doing?
I mean, I think doing is being.
Oh,
I like it.
He's finding the third. Tell me about that. Doing is being. I want to hear about
say more.
I think that when you are a leader, people ultimately follow what you do rather than what you say. And I think I was actually just talking to a group of CEOs earlier that's looking at Happy, and we were talking about this concept of creating organizational DNA. And I said that organizational DNA is ultimately built by the actions of your leaders. And how do your leaders handle difficult moments, disappointments, failures, hiring, firing, all the things that a leader has to do. There's tons of tough moments brought to you every day. And I just think that, ultimately you are your actions. So I to me, doing starts before being, but they're very tightly related, right? It's a tough question but I think there are people that I would say ultimately can be a certain way, but don't actually perform for the organization. And I think that's one of the differences. A high performance organization to me is one that achieves great things. And I just happen to think that you can't do that without people. I think it starts with people for me. And I think people ultimately are going to look at how you behave and what you do and how you act.
I love that. That's a good answer. Yeah, 17.3 is what I'm going to give that. Fantastic. Good work. All right.
What's the scale? Is it out of 100?
We don't know. We can't reveal the scale to you, James. That would not be part of the game.
That would mess up the game here, James.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you actually
out of 10? Okay.
Don't worry about the scale. Just
Yeah,
you
don't
did.
worry about it.
That was
Okay.
it was a
I'm gonna
fantastic
roll with it.
score.
I got it.
Fantastic
I
score.
got it.
Great.
I
It's a
got
great
it.
score, James. Next
Okay.
one, and you alluded to this already. We'll see where you land. What's more important, people or tasks?
Oh, people. It's not even close. Is that even a question?
Yeah, it's a
It
question.
is.
Like, I want to give you a grade for your questions.
Well, what grade would you give me? What grade would you give me? That's great.
On that one, I don't
Yeah.
know. Can I?
See,
I
you don't know the scale. So if you're
I
going
don't
to
know the
scale me on my
scale.
scale, yeah, that's right.
Like a 3?
right.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Like a 3 seems low, no matter what the scale is.
Well, on the Likert scale, three's in the middle. Neither here nor there. Okay, so why is that such a ridiculous question for you, James? Because I think that tells us so much about your philosophy of leadership and about how you go about leading in your company.
Yep.
Well, first off, I do think getting things done is vitally important. I mean, action is important, but action is done by people. And, hiring, developing, putting in the right seats your people is the most important thing any leader does. And I think not all leaders agree. I mean, I think a lot of leaders, some leaders look at people like a medicine or like a vitamin. Like it's not an essential medicine. It's just like people are, a necessity. But the truth is that, virtually every high performance organization in the world that sustains has a great team. So I just don't know how you build a great sustaining organization that creates meaningful value without great people.
We would agree. We'd agree on this show. That tends to be where we land as well. So I appreciate your answer. 16.4. That was fantastic. You're doing well. So next one,
Is
relationship.
Brad not great?
We stopped letting Brad grade.
Yeah.
He
Okay.
just
Or does he just silently judge?
I think your answers are great. I think they're wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. You're just going to make me feel good. Then you're going to start dropping the really tough questions. I have no good answers. Like
Yeah.
you're going to give me two bad options.
It should get a little more difficult when I start. Yep. That's right.
Okay.
I think it will. So, all right, relationships or results?
Results.
Interesting. Results because.
Well, good results come from good relationships. So I'm going to tie those together and as a corollary for you. I mean, first off, not relationships are important. Collaboration is definitely important. But if I go out and put my arm around my coworkers and we go out to a bar and get drunk and have a great relationship but don't achieve anything, have we actually produced any meaningful value for the organization? I would like to say that I might have a good relationship with you, but I might not create any meaningful value. And so ultimately what I'd like to say is that, we want to create positive outcomes for the organization, but it shouldn't be done at the expense of relationships. Typically the best outcomes come from good collaboration. So, I'd like to believe that, the results that we achieve are a result of our ability to work together in a lot of cases. It's certainly in the long run.
No, that's great. That's great. I appreciate that. That is an interesting thought that we can have a great relationship, go out to the bar, get hammered, and there's no results in that, right? Unless we own stock in the companies that we're getting, hammered in, or that is the company, and we're just
there are results like liver damage.
Yeah, that's right.
The fact that my wife wondered why I never came home last night. Like,
where were you?
I
Why
don't
do
like
you have
those
a
results.
massive headache? Yeah. All right. Good work, James. Good work, Brad. Why don't you keep going?
That's right.
I didn't get a grade.
Sometimes we just let the grades
man.
go to the end. Yeah.
Taylor, mute thyself. Your turn is over. My turn.
Okay. Sorry. Yep.
Values or vision?
Values.
Values. Why? Why values, James?
Well, visions. Okay. Again, you're asking me two things that are both important, but like, if you don't articulate your values well and you don't live your values, like, does it really matter what your vision is? I mean, vision without values is Hitler, right? I mean, and so, there's a lot of, you can achieve results. There's a lot of things you can get, but are you really happy with what you've created? I mean, I think great organizations are built on values. And I think values, the word values, I kind of like mixed feelings about it, because it's kind of like the word culture. It's like, well, here is what we value. And do you value what we value. And I like to talk more like mission alignment a lot of times, which is like, look, there's a common set of values we're all looking for, right? I'd like to think as humans, there's a set of just values that we all want to aspire to. Treat each other fairly. We want an organization that rewards people and that appreciates people. I mean, and so it's kind of funny. It's like you put all these values on your website, but it's like, oh, well, what are your values? Hard work. Man, I was really looking for a company that valued being lazy, so I'm really upset right now because I found hard work on your values list. But I think, at the end of the day, making sure that, you're working for an organization that you have alignment with is really important. Like there's three things to me that I think like, you want someone to come to work and be highly motivated. And when someone comes to work and is highly motivated, why? Because they believe in your mission, right? They believe in your values. It's really hard. Like how many times does someone come to work and be like, oh man, I'm highly motivated to come to work today. And you're like, oh yeah, like what's going on? Oh man, I don't agree with like what I do. And like, I don't agree with these guys' values at all. And like, I don't believe in their mission. Like that doesn't happen. So to me, that's why, values and mission would be number one for me.
That's great. Along the same lines, pardon, goodness or greatness? What's more important in leadership, goodness or greatness?
I think goodness. If we're saying goodness in the concept, great is better than good, but I'm assuming you mean great. Like, I don't know. That's hard because like goodness, I'm subscribing like a moral fiber to goodness, which I don't know if I'm reading that into your question.
No,
but
that's the direction. Goodness is, moral fiber. It's ethics. It's think human flourishing. Think a good, healthy, sustainable organization.
So what organization or leader sustainably over time leads without, a good moral compass? Like, yeah, you might get away with it for a year or two, or maybe one company or a launch or something like that. But like at the end of the day, like I think doing the right thing, that's going to win, over time. Maybe greatness, maybe someone that's unethical has a win here or there. They, IPO a company, but like over time, my dad said something to me that I thought was one of the best things that like I'd ever heard, which was I had a kid, wasn't a friend, but a kid on my bus that was throwing my baseball glove and my lunch like out the van window of or out of the window of our bus. And I'm like, Dad, this like really sucks. Like he's never gotten in trouble. Like he threw my like Doritos out the window. And like I said something to the bus driver and the bus driver told me to sit down. Right. And my dad said, no matter what, like life isn't fair. And he knows that he's an asshole. And that's the worst punishment you could ever give him. So like, you don't even need to do anything about it because he's got to live with the fact that he threw your Doritos out. And I thought a lot about that as I got older. And I thought like the thing about goodness is as a CEO is it's really about your intention. Like if you are working hard to do the right things, like to me, that's what gives you the freedom to really be a great leader. And, if you make decisions that are frequently self-serving or immoral, or you're breaking the law, or you're just not treating your people right, like, I mean, at the end of the day, I just don't know how you'd have sustained success that way.
That's good. Culture or productivity?
Productivity, because I believe that long-term productive cultures are ones that are solid organizational cultures. So I'm going to kind of, again, conjoin those together. I think there are actually like healthy cultures that aren't necessarily super productive. I think it's one of those things where you could create a culture that a lot of people would want to come to work. I mean, we joke like if our job was to press a button and everybody immediately got paid $1 million a year, got 100 days of PTO, free food, free healthcare, and like free puppies. Like every time you wanted a puppy, you just went in and there was just like a puppy there. Like who wouldn't work there, right? But like, yeah, I'm in. But like, are we actually a business? Like, are we actually creating like a productive product? Are we creating a profit? Are we creating like positive outcomes in the organization? So I like culture. I like the word organizational culture better. But ultimately, I think like that will all distill down to like the productivity of the organization. Like organizations won't be productive in the long run without a good culture.
And why do you like the term organizational culture better? Tell us more about what's underneath there.
It comes from like, I don't want to use the word hate, but like, I'm really like not a fan of the word engagement, employee engagement, even though I know that's like the key buzzword and like Gallup does all their studies on whether you're engaged or not. Because for one thing is engagement is very strongly driven based on the manager employee relationship. And it's also like people would say, oh, well, nobody says they have a great culture when they have a really terrible relationship with their manager. So it's very driven by that. And the second thing is that I think a lot of leaders take the word employee engagement. They think of it as like, you know, free lunch or like Taco Tuesday or, you know, free birthday cake or whatever. And it's like not a real thing. Where like to me, organizational culture is the DNA of your organization. It's what would happen if you took the managers and leaders out of the building for a week? What does the company do when those people are gone? Yeah. And so to me, organizational culture is your ongoing DNA. It also takes a long time to like improve or screw up. Like it could take a year or two to like turn around your culture. But I like organizational culture because I want to think of like, what's the DNA of the whole organization?
Last one here, recovery or performance?
Performance. I only say that because I don't really recover well. So I'm like really crappy at that. Um, so if you're like
from
perform,
racing,
I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to like, yeah, I'm like, but that's more of like a personal thing, right? Like I actually appreciate recovery. I just don't know how to do it well.
Yep. That's good. James, man, so insightful. And it's such a fun way. Before we ask you to tell us your story, you've already told us so much about your feelings, your thoughts, your perspective on leadership, and already just given us so much insight into who you are. But, you know, at this point, we'd love just to hear you tell us a little bit how you got to where you are today. And it's really, you know, free for you. You can share maybe some of those early experiences that really shaped you, or some of the mentors, or you can share more along the career lines on, you know, the companies that you started and how you kind of find your place here with Happy Company. So tell us your story, James.
I'm just upset that Taylor didn't grade the rest of my answers at this
Oh, I
point. I'm going
did.
to have to get over that.
I
Okay.
did.
Well,
James,
I'm going to have to
don't worry.
get over
You didn't
that. Well,
ask
then
your
you didn't,
score. You didn't ask
you
your
didn't.
final
I just
score.
brushed
I
right
asked
along
my,
past that. I just
You asked
brushed
I
right
how
asked,
along.
you won, James. You asked the
I asked my third score and you like literally said you like shrugged and like kind of did this. And I was like, okay, well,
first
like,
rule of the game is there are no rules. So you scored 347.259, which is a pretty good score.
this is like Hunger Games or something. Like
It is. It's
someone's
barbaric.
going to like attack me with like a spear here during this
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah. You are the weakest link, and then we're just gonna. I tried to say weakest. I said weakest, but you know, and then
That might be a thing also.
yeah, it might
Right.
be.
Yeah. Yeah. 2024.
James, it was a good score, man. You did well.
Okay.
You did well.
Fantastic.
We can neither confirm nor deny that you are in first or last place all time, but you
Or
are
both at
somewhere
the
on
same
the
time.
all time scoreboard. So
Okay.
at some point, we'll probably bring all of our top performers back, and we'll just have
Okay.
them go head to head. So
It'd be like,
then it will be
like
like
that.
Hunger Games.
think like WrestleMania. It'll be like that
Mm,
kind of a thing. Like,
I like that.
Just consider me the Eastern European judge who just kind of sits there and judges harshly in the corner.
Okay, perfect.
But you
I
did
like
well.
it.
You performed. You performed, James. We're proud of you.
Yeah, so my story, you know, it's like an analysis of how many things can one screw up in a lifetime, right? Like how many mistakes can one human make and then and still somehow convince people to still work for him.
please
So,
continue. I
What do you
love it.
mean by that? Yeah.
you know, I really love entrepreneurship. It's something that's really important to me. I think that it's a vital part of you know our world of being able to create great things. I want to build great things. Like at the end of the day, I am the dumbest man alive. And so I sold one of my companies to a private equity backed company a few years ago and did well enough. I probably didn't need to work. And then I decided to be really stupid and start more businesses and, risk the money I made in starting new things. Right. So it's like, my wife can confirm that, I'm not all that smart really when it comes down to it. But no, I mean, just love building stuff. Love building stuff. I tried to build YouTube before YouTube existed. So I started a video sharing startup like a year before YouTube came out. Learned a lot about building tech. Learned how not to do it really well. So I've got that checked off. But no, I've run a lot of different kinds of businesses, from media to live streaming, video production, marketing agency, tech startup, consulting. You name it. I've done a little bit of everything, and just have learned a lot through the journey. Learned a lot about myself. Learned a lot about what leadership means to me. I think my big takeaway has been just leaders learn, and they learn from their mistakes, and it's an ongoing journey, right? Like, there's no light switch that says, man, great, you're a leader, you're a great leader, great, congrats, sweet, finally got that light switch to go on. Yeah, well, yeah, I'm certified. It's just learning, just ongoing learning, right? I think the thing you learn is that how little and there's always so much more to learn. So I just, I think that's a really beautiful part about leadership, is like we're continuing to evolve.
Yeah, no, that's well said, man. Failure. We get common themes a lot on the podcast, and one of them is that kind of failure is the pathway forward if you allow it to be. Failure can either be what hinders you or actually what propels you to your future, right? We talked about the book. I don't know if you've ever read it. The obstacle is the way. Like, whatever is standing in front of you is actually what can propel you to the future that you've wanted for yourself. So I think it's incredible that that's the way that you, as somebody who has started all of these businesses and been very successful, would define yourself. Like that is it's it's a very humble answer, which I think humility is a key component to leadership. And B, I really hope our listeners key in on that you have just learned to kind of, sounds like, embrace failure as your way to actually get on to doing the things that you want to do. Does that fit? It seems like it fits with you.
If you want to learn failure, go try to fly a plane. We were talking about I'm pretty new. I've just started flying last year, and like, landing is really hard, and it will humble you. And I'm like, how can it be so hard to land a little airplane? Like, I've driven, you mentioned race cars, very fast race cars for a long time. And it's like, how can just landing this thing? Like, I see people, like, I've flown in a plane like 500 times. You just kind of land and you put it down, and it just, wheels touch. And sometimes it's rough and sometimes it's not. And then it's like, I'm trying to land, and it's like pretty much about to kill myself before the instructor comes in and makes sure that I don't kill myself. And I'm like, why is this so difficult? Like, this is next to impossible. And she's like, well, every time you get better. And then, like, 18 hours later of flying, I'm like landing, and like, she's like, great job, good landing. And I'm like, I just landed the plane myself. Like, this is amazing. Well, I like failed like landing 30 times, right? And then like just continuing to get better at it. It's just, I don't think humility is an important part of leadership, right? But like, we all failed. Like, I think normalizing failure is like a big part of just becoming great at anything.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Failing forward until you can finally, land the plane, and hopefully don't crash it before you learn how to land it. That would be positive. Can we circle back though? Because one of the things that we haven't talked about is, you just casually throw in there, I race high speed vehicles. So can you talk about, which was a very casual, just like, it's like, oh, everybody does this, and not on Xbox, like, no, in real life. And you've won. So tell us about that part of your life a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like you're like not bad at it.
Yeah,
18, you've won 18 races, 2 of them being championships. That's like I feel like that's a lot for someone who's not into racing.
You're actually Jeff Gordon Jr. or something like that, and we just don't know.
I am a fractional Jeff Gordon. He's like 3,000 times better than me. Not just like 30 times, like some infinitesimal scale better. No, I've been racing since I was 16. I really enjoy it. Gets my competitive competitive spirit out. And there's something about, like, I like the mechanical part. So I drag race mainly, although I've road raced and circle track. I've done a bunch of different things, but there's just something about the mixture of the mechanical part of like building and setting up the race car and then the driving part. Like, it appeals to like the two sides of my brain that like I really like the driving part is more art, and then like the science part is more, it's kind of like happy. Like, you got to have both. Like, it's like the psychology of building a race car. You have to like pick the right parts. You've got to get them to work together. You've got to pick the right people to build it. You've got to tune it. So there's a lot to the equation of like the science part. And then, like I said, there's like the art of driving. So
That's fun. Drag racing is fast. So how, for our listeners who don't know, and I wouldn't be sure, how fast is fast when you're saying, hey, I like to go fast, little Ricky Bobby moment, how fast are you going?
the fastest, say like in 2018 when I won the championship, that car made 3,500 horsepower. It was a Corvette. So that's 3,500 horsepower. And then I went 236, maybe 240 miles an hour, something like that. I mainly ran eighth mile. I don't know if you know, like quarter mile and eighth mile. So it's like there's different lengths. So I mainly ran the shorter distances. And so we'd run like 198 miles an hour on the eighth mile. So like 0 to 60 would be like 0.5 seconds or something. It was like, like incredibly fast compared to what you would normally see in a street car. I had a lot of years of being bad at drag racing, though. A lot of blown up engines, a lot of just, not having my stuff together. And, it takes a long time to like, you learn everything you shouldn't do.
Yeah. And you keep failing and messing it up until you win the championship in 2019, 2018. Is that what you said?
2016, 2018, we won 2 championships those years. Yeah. I mean, it's just, again, just sticking with it, just sticking with it, doing a lot of things wrong, figuring what to do right, being committed, working hard. It wasn't a full-time job. I did it as, it was like, in addition to running my companies, it was like racing was a expensive hobby.
Yeah, it's not a cheap hobby.
You ever seen the joke? It says, I hope when I die, my wife doesn't find out what I really paid for my hobby. So my wife, it says like, I hope my wife doesn't sell my such and such for what I told her I paid for it. So my wife actually knows, she loves racing. And so she knows what it costs to go racing.
Yeah.
So racing is not a smart decision by any means. Like, nobody wakes up in the morning and goes like, oh, it's a really smart idea, I'm going to go racing. It's like, no, I should just take all of my money, light it on fire, and watch it burn.
Right.
And that would be cheaper than racing.
Yeah. And the YouTube hits that you would get from doing that, you might make all of your money back.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you do for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be like a big YouTuber now because I just burn money. Hey, that's what we should do.
As long as it's your money, James. As long as it's your money.
Let's see if this is taken. The YouTube channel Burn Money.
Burn money.
Burner.
Yeah.
We're just going to burn money. Yeah.
Let's do it.
I think that's like I think the advertising will be less than what the cost of the money.
It might be.
It sounds like something Mr. Beast would do. Like, we burn $1 million.
Right. Yeah.
Like, someone needs to send this to Mr. Beast like right now. Like, you should burn $1 million. He'll probably do it, and he'll get like 100 million views, and he'll make more than $1 million.
That's right.
Yeah. That would be the point. Can we make more money? Could we do it though? Could Joe Schmo Taylor make more money from burning it on YouTube than he actually burned itself?
I think the answer is no, unless you're Mr. Beast.
Right.
And then if it's
You've
Mr. Beast, it's
like,
absolutely yes.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Mr. Beast, I burn $1 million, in 10 minutes. And if you like can hold the money, you got to keep the money while it's burning or something. Right.
That's amazing, man. Well, Jay, all right. So a staple that we have on the Daily Leader is to ask people this question, which I'm about to ask you. That question is, what is leadership? How do you define it? I know it's a buzzword. It's a, key term that everybody talks about. But when you talk about leadership, how do you define it?
I think it's, how can you get the organization to want to do things rather than have to do things? And the organization, meaning the people inside the organization, in terms of what gets done. Like, command and control is a style of leadership where you tell people what to do. And I think the true north type of leadership that I'm talking about is how do you get people to want to do this instead of having to do it? Get them to want to come to work. Like, wow, this person just came to work today. They wanted to come to work. Like, they actually get meaningful joy from like their job. They get meaningful value from their relationships at work. They like get a genuine sense of satisfaction from the work they're doing. So that's kind of how I would define leadership, right? And then maybe the inverse of that is, I don't want to come to work. I don't want to do this thing, but I'm doing it because I have to.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea that people want to do it. So tell me for just a minute what it would look like. Like, what are some practical ways that you have done that in your companies?
Oh, I've done that poorly also. No, I mean, it's, I think my thinking has evolved a lot through my time as a leader. And I would say that if you were to take people that worked for me 20 years ago, I think you might find people that says, "Oh yeah, James told me what to do a lot," and they probably are not wrong. I think for me, I'm 48. I think maybe the last 10 years, 12 years, my aperture has changed, and I've really starting to think about how do I create an environment where people feel listened to, they really feel valued, they feel cared about, and then they really feel like the work they're doing really matters. And so if I were to show you what the side of my office looks like, there's like, I have a picture of a bus, and then I have a picture of a bunch of seats in the bus. And I mean, it's very crudely written because I am terrible at drawing anything. Like literally the worst possible artist known to man. And, I think one of the things you ask about, like, what does it take to be a leader? I'm going to come back to like, yes, we want to create this environment, but then I think another vital thing is like, who is actually on your team? Who's on the bus? That's a question before you figure out like who's doing what inside the company. It was just like, you're going to vote by the type of people that you bring into the company. And that means the type of people you bring in, it means the type of people you offboard. And that's really hard because you're like, well, we want this phenomenal company culture. And by the way, half of you, I need to get rid of you. And it's like, well, why? Well, maybe you don't fit the organizational culture and DNA that I'm looking for. So 10, 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't have shared that. I probably would have just tolerated someone, or like even worse, I maybe would not have encouraged our team to give them the kind of tough feedback they needed. And I think now what you would see from me is creating a much more candid, transparent, environment where, if you're not meeting expectations, or if maybe your performance or maybe some of your values are inconsistent with what we're looking for, like, I think we're better off just being really open and upfront about it. And so, to kind of circle back to what you said, I think it's for me, it's been an evolution. And so if you took the last year, for example, how do you build an actual organization that people want to actually be a part of? And I think that starts with just being a good listener, and it takes some time. It doesn't just happen overnight.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, the fact that it's not like a 15-point plan, but actually, if you would to just listen better, if you were to actively listen to your team and the people around you, you might get the feedback that you need to make sure the right people are on the bus, like you're talking about, because some of them may not be the right people, right? And to start to figure out, okay, how do we actually lead these people in a way where they want to be here? So I actually really, I like that listening is a key part of that. So in cahoots with all of that, right? You've got this business, Happy. So can you kind of tell us that? What is Happy? How did you get started? And what has it become?
Yeah, so Happy solves a really important problem for companies, which is how do you create positive organizational culture at scale? And so many, say 10 or 15 years ago, when I was looking to I was really looking to work on my own leadership development. I found an executive coach who really transformed my life, and he was incredibly valuable for me. And his name was John Delmatoff. His company was called Pathfinder. And I really owe him a lot of my career as a leader. He helped me learn how to understand other people, how to create a more emotionally intelligent leadership team. There's a lot of really wonderful things. But it also made me really appreciate how difficult it was to do this at scale. And so being able to coach a group of leaders is very different than being able to coach. How do you coach 500 people in a company or 1,000? And how do you get meaningful change? Like, how do you wake up in the morning and go, well, today I'm going to help all of my employees understand how to have a more effective meeting, or how am I going to get them to reduce conflict, or how am I going to teach them stress management techniques? And it's just really hard. And so Happy, I'll explain what Happy is in a second, but really it came from this desire of like, how can we use technology to improve organizations at scale? And so what Happy does is very simple. It provides incredibly personalized and contextualized coaching at scale to entire organizations through the tools employees use every day. So that would be Slack, Teams, email, Zoom. And all of the coaching is hyper personalized, not just on the person. So like, Brad, if you are getting coaching on Taylor, it's not just coaching on Taylor, it's actually all personalized for you based on your behavioral profile and basically your work style. So if Happy was giving some coaching to Brad and was giving coaching to me on Taylor, the coaching it would give to us would be different. It's all personalized to us.
So it's essentially, it's taking all those mediums, kind of reading what is the person doing, and then what is the person, the leader that's leading that person doing, and then kind of creating, is it a curriculum that you check in, or not a curriculum, but is it like a, hey, it gives you the leader, hey, here's a PDF on Brad and how Brad's doing and how, some opportunities to coach him, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so Taylor, I would say that PDFs are where assessments go to die. So you show me a 40-page PDF and I'm going to show you in the bottom of someone's file cabinet or email. Um, so I'm not knocking the concept of creating a comprehensive assessment. I'm telling you that when you take an organization, you give everybody a DISC assessment, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, it doesn't matter. We give 100 people a DISC assessment. 6 months later, 95% of those people can't find it. If I walked up to you and said, where's your assessment? Like, it's in my email somewhere. I'm like digging through their like trash or their archive folder or something. So Happy's designed to just totally rewrite that whole equation. First off, Happy, it's an app. You can pull up anybody's work style in seconds through their phone app, but also right through Microsoft Teams or email or Slack. So if like I'm in Slack and I'm sending Brad a message and I like want to look his work style up, I just literally /Happy and just @ Brad and it'll give me his work style right there. And then I can actually get coaching right there live in the tools that we're already using. So the accessibility is a big part of it, is we've brought an accessibility component to assessments. But the second thing is that Happy's built on a dual model of continuous learning and on-demand learning. So we use a continuous learning model. So every day you get a daily coach. If so, our companies that use Happy, or we work with lots of coaches and consultants. So at the end of this, I'll give you a big sales pitch on why you guys need to look at Happy as a potential partner. But we work with lots of coaches and consulting groups. But every day you get a daily coach. And that daily coach is hyper personalized and it is delivered on somebody you work with every day. And you might go, how in the heck does Happy know who you work with every day? Well, because we plug into Slack, Teams, and email, we know who you Slack, message, Teams, and email, and we build a social connectivity profile to know who in the organization works together. And then we send coaching to the people you work the most with. So we in real time, for example, like we have a client that has 3,000 employees. There's no way to know in real time who's working together. Like what would you do? Announce like, hey, employees, just tell us who you're working with, and we'll put that down on an index card and like somehow send you like coaching tips on those people. So Happy just knows dynamically who's working together, and then it delivers coaching to those people you're working with.
Yeah, rather than, because I would totally agree, right? If I have an assessment and I'm like, oh, great, I'm an I, or I'm an Enneagram number 2 or whatever, I am not always pulling that out and looking at it and reading it and diving in. I tend to say assessments, I think we talked about this before, they're typically something that, is supposed to be a tool in your tool belt that you're using to help yourself become more empowered and, empower the way that you work with other people. And they tend to end up just collecting dust, right? We don't tend to apply them to daily. I think they're super insightful at the beginning, but I think your product is really cool because it, like you said, daily is integrating. Okay, I know Brad is a D. He's a high D. I know it's different assessment, or however Happy would say, hey, this is how you can work with Brad. So if I, as a two, I'm a two on the Enneagram, right? Which I'm a people person, and I'm relating with Brad, and I forget that, I would probably give Brad this whole, Brad, how you doing? How's your wife? How's all these kind of things? Hey, by the way, here's the project. But realistically, Brad needs, hey, just give me the project and the bullet points, and that would be the best way to work with Brad. So rather than right having to go through and like, oh geez, nobody ever does that. No, that I know of, is going and like pulling back the assessment. Okay, I'm going to write this message to Brad and tailor it to his style. So you have created something that stands in that gap and goes, hey, we know Brad and we know you. So here's the best way to interact. So
Yeah, exactly. So Taylor, it does that, but it also provides the on-demand thing where you're like, hey, I just had a conflict with Brad in a meeting, or I'm really frustrated with him for the ninth time. Brad has not asked me about my puppy. Brad has not asked me about my vacation. All Brad did was ask me, where the damn report was. And I'm upset because my puppy's really pretty. I have a beautiful, pretty puppy, right? So, I mean, all joking aside, like, yeah, I mean, the on demand aspects are, if you look at some of the Gallup research, it's pretty clear, like, especially Gen Z, even, like, employees want more coaching. And coaching, and by the way, like I said, we, not that I'm giving you a sales pitch on you guys or whatever, but
Hey, we
we
like it.
believe
Sell.
sell away.
Yeah, let it rip, man.
human coaching is the gold standard. The relationships and the insights you get one-on-one in a dynamic one-on-one setting are super valuable. But no organizations deploy coaches for every single member of the entire company every week. It just doesn't happen. And
Too
so,
expensive.
especially young and individual, you guys are just way too expensive. Like Brad, you guys need to lower your prices.
Not happening, but thanks.
Brad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm just saying.
Call Happy.
It's all about the people. It's
Yeah.
all about the people.
Brad, if you charge $5 a session, I would hire you for everybody in my team. So come on.
Yeah, and so what's funny is, so we have lots of relationships with coaches and consultants because most of our coaches work with small groups. They're working with usually like, mid-level managers up to leadership team and directors. Typically, maybe they're working with 6 to 8 people at most. And so, we've partnered with coaches and consultants to be able to deploy Happy in addition to their human coaching that they're doing with a leadership team. Because what happens to the 24-year-old that just got hired 2 years out of school and they have a frustrating relationship or a difficult relationship with their manager? They don't understand their manager doesn't understand them. Well, the thing is, they're not getting any coaching. And then maybe they lack comfort in talking to their manager because maybe the problem's with their manager and they don't want to escalate it to HR. And then what happens in that case is either you get, a lack of motivation on the employee, or you get retention. They come in one day and maybe their performance is actually pretty good, but they go, I'm leaving. And you go, what happened? You go, oh, I just found another opportunity. Well, the reality was it was completely solvable, but the organization just didn't provide any resources to help coach that younger person or that person new to their career. So,
James, that's so good. A quick insight here that I think you'll appreciate, and I'd love to have you speak more to, is probably, I would say 60% of my time with clients is actually helping them workshop and practice having conflicts with either the people who they work for or who work for them. Depends on the client, right? And I'm always fascinated by that. I use a system called the Thomas Kilmann instrument model, or Thomas Kilmann conflict mode, and it gives you basically 5 styles of conflict, and you learn through that process how to deploy one of the 5 styles, right? Depending on the other person that you're in conflict with. And so what I find is, like, most of us have optimized our lives for conflict avoidance, right? Whether it's growing up with our parents or our siblings, maybe it's in your marriage, certainly with your boss, you're trying to minimize conflict. as often as possible. And very, very few people are actually really good at having conflict. I mean, like there's got to be like 2% of the population is actually very good at having conflict. And so even just the idea that Happy could provide an insight into how to have conflict with a colleague, I think could be transformational for a culture. And I think using the example of a young professional, maybe an emerging leader of some kind, is perfect because I completely agree with you. Of the clients that I work with, they are least experienced in how to navigate conflict. Whereas the executives I work with are more used to using what I would call like a competing or an assertive model to just kind of get what they want all the time. And so they're not used to someone providing pushback or challenge to them in a way that's actually healthy. So comment more on how you guys see conflict just being an example of a way that Happy's kind of solving problems and creating value. Because I think that that's just an incredibly long lever for organizational change and health.
I mean, you're not wrong. It healthy conflict. I mean, I think conflict is looked at, and this is more me than Happy. So maybe I'll just answer that from my own perspective and then talk a little about Happy. But you know, healthy organizations have conflict. I mean, to your point, an absence of conflict is actually a lack of organizational health. We have different perspectives, we have different experiences, we don't solve problems the same way, and so conflict is really sorting through that and welcoming an open exchange of ideas. And I think the bigger question is, how do we do it in a way that gets us a meaningful outcome? It's funny, I don't actually always agree with people. They might say, oh, well, Tom got really upset in the meeting, like he needs to calm down. And I was like, what if Tom like really didn't agree with like whatever you were saying? Well, he doesn't have to go so upset. And it's like, well, was he disrespectful? No, he wasn't disrespectful. He just was very like passionate. And I'm like, okay, so his style, right? To your point, you probably know a lot more about styles of conflict than I do, but like his style, he wasn't rude, he wasn't disrespectful, but he was passionate. And I'm like, this is that a bad thing? Like, maybe you could just sit with this for a while and just think about that. And so I spent a lot of time not wanting to hear people because I was going to do what I wanted to do anyways. So like, I'm just going to like stumble through listening to you and just do my own thing anyways. And then like, eventually at some point I realized like, wow, that's like a lot of brains is better than one brain. And like, people actually have extremely valuable ideas if you actually like take the time to like genuinely listen. So I think your feedback about Happy is interesting. I mean, in some ways, I want to say I've never thought about it as a complete vehicle for conflict resolution, but I guess I never thought about, using it just purely, almost not purely, but to really lean into the idea that we're going to help you sort through what that is like and not avoid it. Because I think you're right. Like, when we see big wins with Happy, like, it's one of the things that we have is, it's really unusual, is most L&D tools, like if you install a new HR tool, like 10 to 20% of the organization adopts it typically. Maybe 30 or 40% is like good year one adoption. And like, when we put in Happy into a new organization, more than 90% of people receive coaching in any given month. So it's like, even like 90 to 120 days later, more than 90% of the organizations opted into coaching or is receiving some type of coaching. And I think it's because, to your point, I think people recognize like they do want to work on this stuff. Like, when Susan from accounting has rejected your expense report for the third time, like, you're pissed. But I think in a high performance organization, you're also like wanting to understand, how do I navigate through this? Like, what do I do? Like, okay, I'm pissed at Susan, but like, what's the next step?
Well, it's really interesting. Taylor, I apologize for interrupting you. In my experience in corporate land, the Susan in my life never got an expense report without a chocolate bar, right? Because I learned very quickly that like if Susan got my expense report and she got a thank you beforehand, right? That was what she really needed to know. Like, I know that my expense report is hot garbage and that it's really, really frustrating for you to decipher some of the things that I've put here, and that there's going to be a mistake or two. So if I can preemptively appreciate you and just express some like tangible gratitude with some dark chocolate and a literal in-person thank you, like, it's going to solve itself. Like, you'll just send me a nice email asking for clarification and we'll be done. Bada bing, right? And that is not possible in today's post-COVID virtual world. Like, that just doesn't exist anymore. And oh, by the way, not everyone was blessed to be trained by some of the people who taught me to know how to do that, right?
So
So
Taylor, did Brad just submit all of his expense reports incorrectly with chocolate? Like there's like a deeper thing here.
Yeah. He was
Like,
actually this is just pure manipulation, James. That's all
right,
he
I'm
was
like,
doing.
yeah,
I don't know. I'm
manipulation
trying to think
chocolate.
about this.
Yeah.
So like accidentally added a bunch of like extra expenses on there, but he just added some like
That's right.
chocolate bars. Like
Yeah. This is this is actually his money laundering business, so that's how he got
Right.
away with it. He would just
the first rule, Brad, is that we don't talk about this kind of stuff. Okay. You broke the third wall here. Like
Right.
there's no Fight Club, Brad. Come on, man. Get with it. You know, where you at? Brad,
no, you're right.
it's a great point. And that's kind of what I mean, that was all I was thinking was, man, the insightfulness and the ability to make emotional deposits from Happy's coaching along the way would significantly, I think, increase the chances of better conflict resolution because, I always talk about relationships as like a bank account, right? So we either make deposits in the bank account or we take them out. And then we get to our conference meeting or whatever it is, and we come in with whatever bank account we have. So if I have a high bank account because I know that, like, Brad, who is a very driven person, would never mention anything personal, most likely when it comes to work. Brad, I'm just going to rip on you for a minute because it's fun. Um, but Brad has gotten some coaching from Happy and keeps reminding me, hey, I really do hope your puppy's doing well. Super cute. By the way, get your P&L done. I've been waiting for it, right? That would be super great. All of a sudden I go, oh, Brad knows me. And if I'm a very relational person, that matters. That puts more capital into that bank account, of which when we have a higher conflict situation, two things I think that happen. A, I understand Brad better because on the other end, if I'm receiving that and I'm getting the reminder, hey, just remember that Brad is a very driven person, that's going to show that he cares for me, right? And so I also, like, I'm getting all that information from Brad, and I've also been given, like, he's trying to make it work for me. So I just see that as kind of like it's like you can constantly make deposits into your team to be able to go into, high pressure situations, or like in your case, Brad, like, nobody's there potentially to teach you to bring the chocolate bar, but now you've got somebody that can remind you that whatever the virtual chocolate bar is, that's important, and that shows that you know and you care. And I think that's a really, really positive takeaway. I'm like, man, now we can do coaching on top of that, right? Now the 24-year-old who may have quit feels valued and cared for and appreciated, got through some of the early conflicts, has risen up in the company, and we go, man, this person's killer. Cool, you are totally worth the investment to go get you an executive coach. Brad only charges $372 every half an hour, so that's fantastic. We'll get you to work
Right,
with Brad on top of everything,
and you get chocolate bars.
and you get chocolate. So it's a win-win-win.
Or do you pay and give him chocolate?
Well,
Kind of like,
Hershey's Kiss, because I don't know if you've seen the market, but we're in an election cycle. We're trying to trim expenses a little bit. So
Hershey's Kiss? Who has ever asked for a Hershey's Kiss past
well,
I like Hershey's
42?
Kisses.
I mean, I know
thank you,
that's fine.
James.
But would you ask for that? Hey, James, do you want some chocolate? Yes, I would prefer a Hershey's Kiss.
Yeah, I mean, I actually would do that.
You're
Actually, I'm
like,
backing Brad up. Like Hershey's Kisses are great.
Thank
Like
you,
I don't even
James.
like
Thank
dark
you.
chocolate. I mean, and it's got the foil wrapper and just there's a little delight in every bite. I'm like, I'm all in that. I'm just,
oh, I guess I'm wrong.
Taylor,
Okay.
you're off on this.
It's a moment of failure right here, guys. I'm
All right,
going to embrace it.
gentlemen, I'm taking it back here. I'm super curious for you. This is a little bit off script, but I know we're coming to an end here. Oh, as a founder of multiple startups and a CEO for 20 years, why do companies fail so miserably at leadership development? Like why does happy need to exist? Like, in terms of the problem that you're solving, like why do leaders suck so bad at something that is so imperative and obvious in the health of their organizations?
3 reasons. The first reason is it is harder to be a leader today than it has ever been before. When you factor in the complexities of hybrid and remote work into team building, and this isn't a statement on hybrid and remote work, but I think what a CEO or a leader is asked to do today, build a team, build a culture, perform financially. And by the way, half your team's, in the Philippines, and there's 7 people in Texas, and there's 4 people in Florida. And then by the way, you've still got your corporate office where you've got another 50 people or 2,000 people or whatever. I mean, it's just really hard, I think, to run a company today. A lot harder than it was 15 or 20 years ago. And so I think that people are just behind. And I don't think you've got Gen Z tapping into the workforce now. And, I don't know that leaders fully understand how to cope with Gen Z. And so I think my first answer to that is that I think great leaders have known this. And I think great leaders and good leaders are working on this and are always been prioritizing their people. I don't think that you can really run a company in the next 5 or 10 years and not be people oriented. I think that maybe you could get away with it 20 years ago. You wouldn't be a high performer, but you could be competitive. I think what we're going to see over the next 5 or 10 years, even more so than you have now, is you're going to see an organization not perform when people aren't a priority. I don't think Gen Z will tolerate it, for one thing. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is that, people have been a vitamin, not an essential medicine. And you might go, how could a leader think that way? I think, well, a leader wakes up, a CEO or someone that's CFO, and says, okay, here's our organizational priorities. And, where does people rank on that? And, maybe in the middle, maybe middle bottom, but what's number one? Our product, like our market, our finances, our financial performance. But the best organizations realize that financial performance comes from people performance. And so I think there are a lot of leaders looking at this now and really thinking deeply about, how do I engage my people? Like, how do I give them more tools? How do I, connect better with them? How do I create an organizational culture that makes people want to stay? I mean, retention's a real problem. Like when you lose people, when you get talent that walks out the door, that's a big issue. And I think CEOs and owners and founders today are realizing, like, hey, there's like a better way for us to value our people.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree, man. It is interesting. One of the things that Brad and I have said multiple times on the podcast is, if you put your people before your profits will take care of themselves. You can do it the other way, and I think your company will limp on, and it may even do fine. But over the long run, right, your business is run by people, whichever way you want. And I think people like to think now, hey, AI is coming and it's going to help with all these kind of things, and it's going to phase out people. And I'm like, I actually think people development is going to be more important now than it's ever been, because we're more fragmented and we are spending less time in person. And so when you have what we call distance leadership, hey, I'm not in front of you and I still need to lead. We're not spending as much time. We're not bumping shoulders as much. Super important and critical to be leading your team. So, man, guys, I can't believe that we've already hit over an hour. Like, it just
Thank you, James.
Usually, I haven't drank enough of my water. Like, I'm still cruising around.
I've only seen 2 sips. I was
9 a.m.
We actually were meaning
only counted 2 sips, so this is 3. So
yeah.
Oh, this is a chug. Oh, I like what I'm seeing here. Yeah, that was commitment.
Okay.
Now I'm at 8 a.m. So this is not we're not.
What time is it where you are? It's 12:30.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That's fine. You're only got 4.5 hours.
I'm dehydrated. That's what it's called.
You'll get caught up.
Yeah, you realize that your podcast is responsible for my dehydration. I told you about
You're welcome.
Taylor's the long-winded one.
We've been accused of far worse than dehydration. Let me tell you. So,
Oh yeah.
Wow.
yeah. James, where can people find you and more information about Happy?
happycompanies.com. And also, if anybody wants to get an individual profile, you'll be able to go, you can go directly to happycompanies.com, or you can go to happyprofile.com. And if you want to just find out what your happy work style is, you can create a free plan and you can do all kinds of stuff for free. You can invite your team, and then, you can upgrade to the pro plan if you like all the features you get.
Love that. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah, that'll definitely be in our show notes. So if you're on YouTube, or if you're one of the few listeners on iHeartRadio or all the other platforms, it will be there. We make fun of iHeartRadio every time because there are still people using iHeartRadio apparently. So that happens.
And James slowly closes his iHeartRadio window.
Yeah, he's like shame.
One final question. Okay, so Sam's Club or Costco? I mean, this is a big one. We usually try to get this one in too. It's just no judgment. There's no right answer here. Although there's a little judgment, but we're just curious about you and your shopping habits.
I just Instacart everything. So I'm like a terrible shopper. So I think Costco and Sam's Club are available through Instacart. So I just don't really care. I'm just like, who's got organic blueberries? Okay, Costco, done.
Yep, deal. I love it.
All right, Apple
Perfect.
or Android?
Always a third option for you.
Yeah. Apple or Android person?
Who uses Android?
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
That's a thing?
Great answer.
Is this 1998?
That's how we.
Wait, what year is
Score
this?
of 1 million, high score.
Yep, you just won. You just won, James. First place. And James, honestly, man, this was super fun. This was great. Thank you. We'll definitely have to have you back. I feel like we have a whole host of questions we didn't even get to ask. But I feel like our listeners, I learned so much. I got so much out of today. So super grateful, super excited to look more into Happy, and I hope our listeners do too. Brad, tie a bow on us. Take us home.
Don't forget to subscribe. Taylor said mother-in-law. That's fine. My mother-in-law is not super into leadership development. She's got other things that, she's into, grandkids, gardening, things of that nature. But, your coworker, you can share this with your coworker. Your boss probably sucks at leadership, let's be honest. So he needs this for sure. He needs to meet James. That, maybe don't say it when you slide it in, but let's send it his way. And then
setting me up.
Commenting, guys. I've been mentioning commenting. The YouTube commenters, take it easy. We want your comments, but we just want your happy comments, your nice comments.
We don't comments.
Your weird comments about my height, about Trader Joe's, about other things. No, don't. We don't care. We don't want to hear that. So honestly, thank you so much for listening. Taylor wants your weird comments. That's fine. Do those for him. But until next time, guys, thank you so much for listening. Go check out happycompanies.com and see all the great work that James is doing. And we look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.